So many of you know that I am no stranger to reporting on infamous and famous a celebrity blogger Perez Hilton. One of the last stories I did was in celebration and support of his newfound faith in God, him reading his Bible, taking his children to church. And actually, I was criticizing a national Christian broadcast network that was focused solely, it seemed to me, on his sexuality. Did God change his sexuality? They couldn't even rejoice at the fact that someone who never knew God is saying that God has shown himself, revealed himself to him, and that he was excited to start a journey of faith. That wasn't big enough for them. It had to be about his sexuality. And so, again, I'm no stranger to reporting on him. Today, I wanted to talk about some things that have come to light since August 4th. Many of you know that on August 4th, he was on live stream on TikTok. And he was unfortunately engaging in acts of self-mutilation at his Florida home. His sister was there, his 3 children were there, and they were all able to get out of the home, and his sister was able to call the police and get her brother the help that he needed. She found him in the shower with a box knife. He had been on live cutting himself with a knife, a butter knife, and then later she saw that he had a box cutter. And for those of you who don't know, Perez is still hospitalized. He's still in a healthcare facility. He's under what they call the Baker Act, which is a law that allows medical professionals to hold adults, patients, for psychiatric evaluation without their consent. So since this has happened, again, several things have come to light, and I wanted to share those with you. When I read these things, I totally understood why he had a mental breakdown, because I think that's what happened. I think he totally had a mental collapse. And it was really mostly to do, y'all, with financial pressure. For those of you who are not like me, I've been following Perez for many, many years on and off. I will tell you that Perez takes care of his entire family, and that is a lot on one person. And there was a time when, the dollars were rolling in for Perez. And then as media has changed and as there have been more celebrity bloggers and all those types of things, and people have transitioned to podcasts, and he did have a podcast and all those things, the revenue for him wasn't the same as it used to. He said that. And then he would get banned on various platforms. And of course, that would be one stream of income that was cut off for him. So let me go through the things that we've now learned that we think may have led to his mental breakdown. The first thing is this. We have now found out that Perez was actually, and I have to say allegedly because I didn't talk to him, but allegedly trying to sell his blog for $10 million. For those of you who don't know how the selling of businesses works, or blogs or websites work, I'm going to let you do your research on that. But if you have a very successful blog the way he had, you can ask for a lot of money, because it's not just the blog that they're going to get, it's all of the followers, all the foot traffic, shall we say, that website is going to get. However, sources are saying that very few people were interested in purchasing his blog for that amount, and that he was offered a fraction of that, like 1 million or less, or they said under 1 million. And that really, for us, that's like, oh, take it. But, when you have all these people to support, and you're living in Vegas, which is very expensive to a place to live, it's just not something that's sustainable. And when you're giving over your website, that's giving over, again, all of the traffic that your website gets, and who else knows what would have gone into the sale of his website. So they are saying that he became depressed after that, and that people were just telling him that, the blog that and the website that he worked so hard to build for all these years, it's been a couple of decades, it just wasn't worth what he was asking for it. The next thing that we've learned that potentially they're saying led to this breakdown was he wanted to do a complete rebrand once he sold his blog. And he wanted to focus more on Christian content, to focus on his newfound faith, his love for Jesus. However, they're saying that there was a big struggle there with how would he launch this new rebrand after, what they say, a lot of the harm that he's done to different celebrities over the many years. I'm going to say this. I think that all of us know when someone has sincerely changed or when they are sincerely trying to make an effort to change the kind of person that they are. Now, I don't know Perez personally. I've never had any conversations with him. I was just a fan, and I watched him on and off, like I said, for years. And I do remember some of the things that he did. I personally wasn't aware that he did anything that was horrible. I think murdering someone is horrible. I think molesting a child is horrible. I think slitting your neighbor's throat is horrible. The fact that he exposed celebrities, I don't think is horrible. The fact that he outed people who were gay, who were secretly gay, and they were going on national television saying they weren't, I don't see that as horrible. You know, I agreed with Perez when he said back then, these are people who are doing damage to the LGBTQ plus community by coming out here saying one thing when behind the scenes they live a whole different life. Remember, we talked about the trans woman who outed Will Smith in what was it, the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And then we talked about Lindsey Graham, who was a, congressman who was, on the front lines to keep all these laws from being passed and yet indulging in his personal life. So again, I think sometimes when people say he was horrible, he was terrible, tell me what he did that was horrible and terrible. Or was it just things that we just didn't like that he did? Because again, we have to redefine what horrible and terrible is. Just because someone did things we didn't like, but they didn't do physical harm to somebody, they didn't destroy their lives, that is horrible. Well, he destroyed people's lives when he outed them. No, they destroyed their lives by trying to live one way in public and one way in private. It was going to come out eventually anyway. And so at the end of the day, I have not all of these years seen, read, heard of anything horrible that Perez Hilton did. But then too, I know what horrible really means, okay? I'm not one of those people who goes around and says, the 66-year-old is dating a 25-year-old. That's horrible. No, they're two adults. I don't like it. I would prefer she date somebody around her age, but it's not immoral. They're two adults. And in this world, people have gotten things twisted. They don't know the difference sometimes between what's immoral versus what I just don't like that the person did. Let me get off of that soapbox as I can stay there. The next thing that we have learned that could have potentially, they're saying, led to this mental breakdown online was, guys, that he was telling people, he was telling his friends that he was no longer gay. And I want to read a quote that one of his friends told to a reporter. This was under anonymity, of course. I'm reading verbatim. They say, he had completely changed the way he talked about himself. He was talking about his sexuality differently and saying that he had found a new path through his faith. He was telling people he considered himself ex-gay. He was very serious about it. This wasn't a joke or something he said once. He was telling people this on a regular basis. Well, I think, from what some of the other insiders said to some of these reporters, I think, the pressure of what that was going to look like for him, I can definitely, from an outsider's perspective, understand, what that would do, because that would be a significant reduction in revenue from what he was doing to if he was going to pivot, like we talked about in point 2, to doing this Christian content. I don't know how much money is in Christian content. But I definitely know it's nothing like the level that, he was used to just doing celebrity culture. Now, I want to talk about this fourth thing that we've learned, and I want to play a video, okay? Now, this is not the video of the live stream, okay? Anyone who plays that, they are getting dinged on social media by the social media companies because it was very traumatic, and it's just really, it's not something that, people should play. But I will tell you, you can still find the video. I wasn't able to stomach it all. I could only get through just a few seconds of it, and seeing him all covered with blood, I just couldn't. And so I will tell you all that prior to this, those of us who were following Perez, we know that he had multiple scares, physical health scares. He had a number of surgeries. So allegedly, they're saying that after his 21-day hospital stay, when he had sepsis, and then he had to have those surgeries when he was in the hospital, that apparently this totally made him lose a lot of money because he wasn't able to work. He was holed up in the hospital for 3 weeks straight. And I think for someone like Perez who relies on social media as his main source of income, not to mention when it comes to social media, if it is a person's main source of income, you have to be consistently putting out content, multiple times a day. And, I guess to get to whatever financial goal he had. But allegedly the hospital bills were so expensive that the bills were piling up. And they said that he just felt this was the quote the friend said, this crushing financial pressure. A lot of you know that after Mario, which is his real name for those of you who don't know, after he got out of the hospital for those 21 days, he came right back, didn't he, y'all? And he started working immediately. Like, he was making videos. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish he could just relax. But I understood he was responsible for his mom, his 3 children. Now, his sister did help him with his website and things of that nature. But still, though, his business, what he built was taking care of everyone. And so Perez is the star of the show. And, a lot of us were shocked to see his physical appearance because he had lost so much weight, which is typical when you've been in the hospital and sick for 3 weeks. And he had lots of things still that he needed to take care of. But this is what happened. A lot of people may have forgotten that a few weeks ago, Perez had to go back into the hospital for another surgery. And he did announce that he was actually in the hospital there in Vegas, and he made this stream. So let's take a listen to this. Go ahead and adjust your volume.
Back in the hospital, and I was admitted. Hello, my fam. It is Perez Hilton, the queen of all media, the original influencer, and I'm back at the best hospital in Las Vegas, Southern Hills. I've already seen some of the nurses that took care of me for 21 days when I was here fighting and beating sepsis, thanks to these amazing doctors, nurses, and God. And now I'm back, and I have to have emergency surgery tomorrow. And I'm so happy. I'm so grateful, because this is a blessing from God. We caught this early. Let me tell you what happened. I went to see my surgeon today, really good timing, God. And last night, I started having real soreness and pain in one of my legs. And this morning, it got way worse. I couldn't even walk. I had to use my walker. So when my surgeon saw that, he sent me to the hospital to get checked out, have an ultrasound, and see if I had a blood clot. And I do. I have a deep vein thrombosis. And I'm so thankful to God that we caught this early, because if that blood clot had gone to my lungs or my heart, it could have been real bad. So tomorrow I'm having a thrombectomy where they're knocking me out. I'm being put under in an emergency surgery, and they're going to remove the fully occluded blood clot, which is massive. It goes from my groin to about almost my foot, like 3/4 down my calf. And I'm happy because we caught it early, and I know that the amazing medical team here at Southern Hills is going to make this a piece of cake, and God has got me. And if you want to send prayers, that would be appreciated. So, here we go again. If you could drop the praying hands emoji in the comments section, that would mean a lot. I'll update you guys when I can. See you on the other side.
Yeah, and he came through that just fine. Now, when I was telling you about what some of his friends were telling some of the reporters, that these back-to-back hospital stays led to crushing hospital bills, and he wasn't working, so the money wasn't coming in. They also said, y'all, that as the bills were mounting, he was desperately trying to get work, and it just wasn't happening. That many projects that he had in the works were allegedly falling through, and that it got to a point where he was just doing anything that would give him a paycheck. And so I don't know about you guys, but I remember, well, I won't tell a personal story. I have to be so careful with those things. But I will just say, I know from experience how even when you have health insurance, and I don't know if Perez had health insurance, but I will just say, I think a lot of us know that hospital stays, even if it's for a day, if it's for you go into the ER for some, this stuff is expensive. It's like, well, the doctor only talked to me for 10 minutes, maybe 5, or I should say he talked to me for 5, maybe 10 at the most. And these bills are thousands of dollars. And then you get bills separately for every little thing. And so I definitely can understand he was in there y'all, for 21 consecutive days, multiple surgeries. Then he had to go back for another surgery. You can imagine. And he's got all these people that he's responsible for. He's got a mortgage. He's got, all the other, just the normal bills that come with, day-to-day life. And so allegedly these 4 things, y'all, are what led to the crisis, the breakdown. I will also say, I wanted to just give you guys a few other things that we've learned. His mom has been granted by the judge temporary custody of his 3 children. So that's great. Also, his sister, some of you may have seen some of the interviews that she is doing. If you haven't seen those and you're interested, you can find them widely on YouTube. Also, we have been told, I should say the reporters are speaking out about what friends have said, that Perez is still not in a stable frame of mind. They are saying, I want to read this quote. One of his friends told a reporter, quote, "He doesn't have a lot of presence of mind. He's not able to fully process what happened." And, I will tell y'all, that really broke my heart. We've also learned that he had to have multiple stitches, and people are afraid that he may be disfigured. Now, I think when his friends say disfigured, that's, again, it goes back to what I was just saying. What do we really mean here? A few scars, to me, disfigured is someone who has had a major accident, or they were in the military and they, have, all these burns. And, so sometimes I feel like, we just misuse words just for the sake of dramatic effect. But for sure, if you did see even some of the video as he was cutting himself, you definitely know that he will have a lot of scars. Hopefully at some point he's going to be able to get those lasered, because you can get scarring lasered we live in a great day of technology and plastic surgery. And so maybe that won't affect his self-esteem or his work even that much. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you something else that his friends are telling the reporters. And that is that some of them are saying that they're concerned that he may be enjoying the attention. Now, I couldn't understand that. I was like, wait, I thought they said he didn't have a lot of presence of mind and that he's not able to fully process what happened to him. So then how is it possible that he could be enjoying the attention? And then the person said that one of the things that Mario had been longing for was a comeback. And they also say that his website has gotten more traffic since this event than it has gotten in an extremely long time. Now, I will say, having followed him on and off for years, did I think that he may have had some mental issues? I will say that I think he was definitely, at times an odd duckling, I can remember I don't know how many of you remember this. This is a long time ago, y'all. This is like, I guess, 14, 15 years ago. He would get kicked off TikTok a lot. Okay, he would be getting into it with these younger people, and Perez would come online and he'd be crying about being kicked off of TikTok. And now he was a fully grown man. He was not in his 20s. I think he was somewhere in his maybe early 30s. I don't know, something like that, And I do remember thinking, okay, but I didn't know if he was just doing that, for attention, or just doing it to be dramatic, or if he was truly heartbroken over being kicked off TikTok. But he did say that it was because he made a lot of his money from TikTok. And so, of course, being banned would be, again, as I said earlier, cutting off one of his streams of income. Now, as I get ready to let you guys go, let me tell you what I hope here. I really hope that he gets the support he needs. And it definitely sounds like he has the support he needs. For those of you who do know his mom, Perez and his mom have a fantastic relationship. His sister and himself, he and his sister, rather, they've had a bumpy ride, but they have gotten much better over the many years. He seems to be a great father to his 3 children. Those kids seem to love their daddy. What I'm concerned about is the fact that he is now hospitalized again, and what is this going to mean for his financial, situation? Because bills will pile up, because y'all know bills don't stop just because we're sick. Bills don't stop just because someone has even died in our family. Bills don't stop just because we're in the hospital. And so I fear that he may be really worried about what is going to be the financial, result of all of this. But his friends did end on a positive note, and so will I. They say that Perez has his Bible with him in the hospital at this facility, and he has been reading it, and he has been praying a lot. And so my prayer is that God will see him through this, and that when he comes out of this, that he will not only have a testimony, but that he will make the changes that he wanted to make by going into a different direction. But I do think there's a way to do celebrity culture, entertainment coverage in a responsible way. There are tons and tons of people who do that. And I think instead of making a hard pivot to Christian content only, I think, it would be great if Perez could continue what he is doing, but just do it in a different way, in a more responsible way. And those are my thoughts, and those are the 4 things that we've heard. Let me review them again. We've heard that he tried to sell his blog for $10 million and very few takers, and the ones who were slightly interested said, no way, 10 million, maybe under $1 million. And that was disappointing and very, very hurtful for him. The second thing we've learned is that, he wanted to do that hard pivot to Christian content. And then we heard the third thing was that he was telling people he was no longer gay. And who knows, was he rejected by his friends for that? We don't know. And then finally, we learned that all these hospital stays were massively crushing financially, on top of all the bills that were just piling up because he wasn't able to work all those days. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you on the next one. Leave your thoughts below. And you know what, guys, for those of us who do care, let's say some prayers for Perez and his children. I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye, guys.